Welcome back to In the Defense of, a show where I look at some less than popular fighting game characters and try my best to explain why I think they deserve more love. For the third episode of this series, we're going to be looking at Necro, who in my humble opinion is one of the more underrated characters in the Street Fighter series.
Sorry I'm late!
Now, if you're one of the many people who never played the Street Fighter 3 series at any point between their release in the late 90s to, well, today, then you'll probably be asking yourself a very simple question. Who the hell is Necro? And honestly, you'd be fair to ask that question. Whenever the great roster debate begins at the dawn of a new Street Fighter game, Necro always appears fairly low on people's character request lists, if he even appears at all. But for the fair few that know of Necro, they'll either tell you one of two things about him, that his freakish design, moveset and mannerisms make him a must-have for a modern Street Fighter entry, or that the same freakish design, moveset and mannerisms belong more in Darkstalkers, and I mean, well, it's not like they're dead or anything, right? While I obviously fall into the former, I've never faulted anyone for not falling for the wacky and weird charms that Necro provides. His design is outlandish and freaky, even for Street Fighter. It wasn't until 12 got added anyway in Third Strike that Necro had someone else on the roster that looked even remotely freakish as he did, and trust me, 12 was a whole other topic for another day. I mean, just imagine it. It's 1997 and you've waited so long to see what Capcom would do for the follow-up to the legendary Street Fighter 2. You finally go into the arcade and you see it, Street Fighter 3 New Generation. After putting your quarter in, you browse through the roster of 10 characters and see Ryu, Ken, a young ninja girl, a new Shoto, a blonde wrestler, a British boxer, and what the hell is that? That's a pretty natural reaction that I'm sure most people have had upon looking through the roster of any version of Street Fighter 3. However, that's unfortunately where most people stop. They take one look at Necro, decide that he's simply too weird and freaky for the series, and they move on to the next character, and I think that's a shame. It's not until you actually select Necro and mess around with him that you realise that he's actually one of the most energetic and, dare I say, fun characters in the roster. Now, I'm not talking from a gameplay perspective at that latter point, as I'm, as you've no doubt gathered, an awful Necro player in Street Fighter 3. Rather, the fun that I'm talking about comes from just simply observing Necro. His goofy animations that range from stretching his skin into a silly face to flopping down into himself and belting out a musical tune are all things that make Necro just a joy to watch.
You win.
With the addition of Effie by his side from Second Impact onwards, however, Necro becomes one part of a dynamic duo that excel at the only thing that really matters to them, being themselves. However, the funny and endearing antics of Necro and Effie are only the mere surface of what is a tragically dark backstory for the both of them, but especially for Necro, real name Ilya. Born into a poor family in Russia, Ilya left his home to accept a job opportunity with the promise of riches for both himself and his family. Ilya soon realises though that he had fallen into a trap set up by the secret society and was kidnapped and placed into the G Project, where he was cruelly experimented on with the goal of being made into the perfect super soldier. Now a mere mutant of his former self, the man now known as Necro is soon forced to perform jobs for the society under pain of death. Out of the entire Street Fighter cast, Necro by far has one of the most tragic backstories in the series. It's only after digging into Necro's past that you start to look at his fun and quirky mannerisms in a different way. Necro has gone through unimaginable pain while under the Illuminati's imprisonment, and you can see the fruits of his tortures in his zapped sprite, where there are visible signs of his bones being painfully extended to allow his body the ability to stretch. While we've never learned what the society did to her, Effie is also a product of their experiments and harbours a similar hatred of Gil and his followers. While most people would have surely cracked and given up after going through such pain and torment, it's together that Necro and Effie find their reasons to keep going. It's through their goofy and quirky antics together that the two cope with their physical and mental traumas, and it's through that shared pain that the two's friendship eventually blossoms into love. Necro loves Effie and is willing to do anything it takes to protect her from the society and their attempts to regain the two under their control. Effie too loves Necro and is fiercely loyal to him, willing to put herself in danger repeatedly in order to be with him. Sadly, it's only fitting that the reality of such trauma wouldn't just be simply defeated by love. Despite his hardest to keep his plucky exterior, Necro often falls into surly moods that can sometimes lead to dark thoughts that are fueled by the rage and pain he feels from his past. However, these sullen and dark moments begin to dwindle upon going on the run with Effie, with Necro beginning to rely on his own determination in order to gain his freedom. Even when Gil sends the fruits of his tortures after them in the form of 12, Necro's determination to live the life he desires with Effie allows him to overcome their so-called perfect warrior. It's this determination, along with his own inherent optimism, that begins to push Necro and Effie forward. As long as the two are together, nothing, not Gil, not Urien, not even heaven and earth itself, can stop them. With all of this in mind, it saddens me when I see people rebuke Necro and his possible return to the series for the reason of him being too freaky. On the contrary, I think Street Fighter is a place that accepts freaks of all kinds. I mean, it's not like we don't already have our fair share of weirdos in the series. Characters like Blanca and Hakan have been fan favourites for years, and both have their own mannerisms and facets to them that could be labelled as being just as freaky as Necro. So if Necro is too freaky for Street Fighter, then shouldn't they be too? In all honesty, it's a pretty fruitless question to ask. At the end of the day, Hakan and Blanca both came from incredibly popular and successful entries in the series, and Necro just didn't. It's only natural that people will be more attached to characters they know and liked, and it's not like Capcom has ever really publicly promoted Necro as a major part of the series. But is Street Fighter 3's lack of success truly the main reason why Necro is so relatively forgotten and ignored? It's hard to say, but for whatever reason, I feel like both Capcom and the Street Fighter fanbase are majorly missing out on Necro and Effie. With their tragic backstories, their determination to be free, and their unyielding love for each other, I truly think Necro and Effie could easily be fan favourites. It's just a case, sadly, of waiting for someone, anyone, to give them that chance. Until then, we're at least left on a sweet note with Necro and Effie, their last appearance in the series being a showcase of the love that binds them so tightly. In that sense, even if we were never to see them again, at least our last image of the two is how it should be. Them both together, their future ahead of them for the taking.
We await your return, warrior.